Good Sunday morning, everybody. We're going to pick up sort of where we left off last week. We spent about half of the program with City Councilman Dennis Zine talking about the city's plan to shut down all of the medical marijuana dispensaries here in the city, and that's about 830 some odd dispensaries, pending some changes, some clarifications, so on and so forth. But the whole issue of cannabis, marijuana, really deserves more talk than we had time for that day. So we've invited Cheri Sicard to join us. She is with the Women's Alliance at NORML,
Right.
which is, and NORML is the acronym for the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws.
Correct, correct.
I remember 1970 when NORML first started up. You compare 1970 with 2012. There's been some changes, at least here in California, in the laws. I think they're pretty significant changes.
Oh, very significant. And not only California, there's 16 states where medical marijuana is now legal. So there's been significant changes. We also have 3 full legalization initiatives on the ballot here in Oregon, Washington, and Colorado coming up in this next election. So we've seen a lot of significant changes, not as much as we hoped. When NORML was founded in the 70s, we thought at the time it'd maybe be a year or 2 before we saw legalization. That was during the Carter administration. There was a big scandal with Jimmy Carter's chief of staff, and that ended that. And then Reagan came in and just say no, and here we are.
Yeah. But beyond the medical marijuana, I think we've kind of forgotten the fact that to a large degree, possession of marijuana for personal use has been, in effect, decriminalized to a great deal in California.
Well, yes and no. You say that, but there's still so many arrests that happen. I mean, we currently have over 500,000 people in jail on drug charges. Half of that is marijuana, and a good portion of that is just possession, not a violent crime at all. There's people in jail for marijuana that are serving longer sentences than violent criminals and rapists and murderers, the way our drugs are. So you say it's been decriminalized, but
Not fully.
so
not
many
fully, but
arrests still happen.
There's a basic, if you have an ounce or less for your personal use, it's you pay a fine
Okay.
and they slap your hands.
Yes, sort of, but I mean, look at it this way. I believe it's since 2000, we've had 7.9 million marijuana arrests in this country. Think of the resources that takes. Even if we're not talking about incarcerating people, let's just say those are minor arrests. That takes a minimum of 2 law enforcement officers several hours to process, even if the defendant is let go. And if you add that up, over the course of a year, we're talking about 2,400,000 wasted law enforcement officers' time spent on marijuana instead of violent criminals.
The standard stereotypical response to that is that marijuana is, for example, a gateway drug, that it leads to other things, and so it needs to be nipped, if you'll pardon the expression, in the bud.
If you pardon my expression, I'd like to nip that argument in the bud right now.
This is your opportunity.
This is my opportunity. Statistically, for every 104 marijuana smokers, you'll find 1 regular cocaine user and less than 1 heroin user. So what does that tell you about the gateway theory? It's just not true. People are also worried that if we liberalize our marijuana laws, that more people are going to use this. And there's been studies done, government-sponsored studies, over the past 25 years that show conclusively this just doesn't happen. Also, it doesn't change adolescents' behavior about drug use if we liberalize the laws. So all those theories kind of are knee-jerk reactions. They seem like what it should be, but when you actually look at the science and the statistics, they just don't hold up.
But I don't recall off the top of my head who it was that said it, but statistics don't lie, but humans do. Are we cooking the numbers here at all, or is this really not as much of a threat, or no threat, as
Well, I don't think it's much of a threat at all because, first off, people have been using marijuana long before we legalized for medical use.
And it was legal at
Exactly, and the use really hasn't changed much. So the sky has not fallen in. We have not become a nation of drug addicts as a result of this. So what it's going to do if we do regulate this is give patients, first off, safe legal access. And even for recreational use, it will give consumers safe legal access. When you get rid of regulations, what you're doing is you're endorsing the cartels. You're sending the people that use it back to the back alley, And if you're a sick patient, that's not a good place to be getting your medicine. But people are going to use marijuana regardless. Do we want to regulate it, tax it, have society benefit for it? Or do we want to support the cartels, which causes so many other problems? I mean, not just here. I mean, in Mexico, since 2006, we've had 60,000 people die as a result of drug war violence, and another 10,000 missing. It's both sides of the border. This is creating so many problems.
Well, and that's part of an issue that a lot of people don't talk about. If, for example, everybody who wants to use a drug, whether it's cannabis or ecstasy or heroin or anything else, if there wasn't such a huge demand in this country, if there were not Americans who want to scoop this stuff up, the cartels would not exist. They'd go out of business. Yeah?
Exactly. And I'm not saying that legalizing cannabis is going to completely wipe out the cartels, because they do things besides cannabis, but that cuts significantly into their profits, maybe half or more. And that really will help to cripple that problem.
And here in California, it's no secret that particularly in Northern California, cannabis is a huge cash crop.
Exactly, a huge cash crop that creates jobs, and dispensaries create jobs too, the collectives that are out there. The U.S. attorneys have sent over 300 letters to landlords. These are tax-paying business people that are renting property to legal medical marijuana dispensaries. Since last October, we're 300 threatening letters saying, if you don't stop renting, we're going to seize your property. That doesn't sound like America to me. I mean, I'm a patriot. I'm a libertarian. This just doesn't sound like the America I know and love. I mean, my earlier books were on citizenship, patriotism. This makes no sense to me, that the government is threatening citizens this way.
And there's also the question of you're talking primarily about the dispensaries, and the dispensaries have been the source of so much violence, so much crime.
Well, that's
here.
not really true either, is it?
Well,
when you look at the statistics.
Where's my press pass? I cannot tell you how many stories I've done here in Los Angeles where somebody goes in and holds up a dispensary, either for the cash that's around or for the inventory, or both. There are crooks out there who think that that hitting a dispensary is an easy mark.
And there's crooks that hit convenience stores, and crooks that hit banks. In fact, former police chief Charlie Beck did a study that compared dispensaries to banks, and found that it was much more likely that a bank is going to get robbed than a dispensary. But I don't see the city council trying to ban banks.
Yeah, and we might as well take it one more step. In the city or the county of Los Angeles, how many liquor store holdups do we have?
Exactly. So that's
more,
my point.
A lot more than banks.
Yes, and a lot more than medical marijuana dispensaries. In fact, a lot of times crime goes down in an area because the dispensary usually has a security guard, cameras. They really are set up for this.
Yeah, I don't want to disagree with you, but again, in my experience and the stories I covered,
yeah. Well, I can't say that it never happens.
The security guards, and I'm not arguing with you, but the security guards, it's whether they're at a marijuana dispensary or at a liquor store or a restaurant or any place else. So many of these crooks come in there and they're armed to the teeth, and they don't care if you got security
Well,
guards.
I mean, I'm not saying it can't happen, but it's statistically not the problem that our opposition likes to paint it to be.
So we're fairly enlightened these days, I think. Why does marijuana continue to be illegal, particularly in this conflict that we see between the state of California and its laws and the federal laws?
Well, a lot of politicians, unfortunately, are confusing a medical issue with a law enforcement issue. That's one of it. There's a lot of special interests that have their hand in this, be it alcohol, tobacco, prison lobbies. All of those have a big hand in keeping things illegal. So that's part of the problem. And I think, I'm an activist. One of the largest problems I see is the public who thinks this issue does not apply to them. There's so many people that think if they don't use cannabis, this issue doesn't apply to them, and they couldn't be more wrong. I used to be one of those people. But this is an issue that has its fingers in so many other areas. The prison industrial complex, medical research that's being thwarted because of the illegal status, environmental ravages because hemp remains illegal. Families being ripped apart because a parent goes to jail or a student loses their student loan because they now have a drug arrest on their record. The only real difference between our politicians who are making these draconian laws and these students that are getting their student loans ripped away is the politicians never got caught. But almost all of our politicians have used it, but they're enforcing these laws.
The hemp connection is with hashish?
No, hemp is used for industrial use. There's so many products can be made from hemp.
Yeah, because you see all kinds of things.
Paper, plastics, fuel, biofuels, all more efficiently than they're currently being done. And we can sell hemp products in the United States, but we have to import them from Canada, from France, from England, instead of putting American farmers to work. This is insane.
So the hemp clothing, for example, or the hemp oil that...
Has to be imported.
Ah.
And why? There's no THC in it. The THC content of hemp is 0.3.
Yeah.
Cannabis would be anywhere from 3 to 10%. So it's not going to get you high, but our government lies about this. The drug czar just said a few weeks ago that hemp can get you high. That's patently false. That's like saying, I'm going to eat overripe grapes to get a buzz from the wine. Same difference. It's just not true.
Yeah. We'll be back. For more information about NORML, which is, as we were saying, the National Association for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, you can go to www.norml, N-O-R-M-L is in the acronym, .org, www.norml.org, and forgive us for having to abbreviate National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, but the software that enables us to do this stuff don't allow that many letters in the line. All right, we'll be back and we'll repeat this, of course, but stay with us.